I noticed that you don't use Lorem Ipsum in any of your designs. You actually put text that feels real.
What a great observation. I do want to say a couple things on that, actually. The first is that part of what makes Slack special and friendly is our voice and tone. That's the first thing. The second thing is I wholeheartedly believe that content and content design greatly informs our overall strategy and direction for the design work we're going to do, all the UX UI work we're going to do afterwards. So I think it's actually really important to use real content, to make it feel real, to get a great understanding of what it's going to feel like in product. So yeah, you're never going to see Lorem Ipsum on any Slack designer's work. Content is way too important to us. Okay.
Folks, this is a really rare insight. We're going to get into how a 0 to 1 project happens at a big company like Slack. Andrew, I'm super stoked to see how you navigated the 0 to 1 project. But first of all, what was this project about?
Okay. Remember I told you I had that overview? Let me just pull up a couple slides and talk you through it. So you're getting the full story of how I actually use Figma to storytell. And yeah, this project has many a name: Slack for eye tracking, Slack for ALS, big button mode, simple Slack. I don't know yet. So let's go through it together and I'll show you. So just like super high level, I'm not going to spend too much time going through all these slides. That's not what this is about, but there is something important that you should know about this work, and it's about ALS. So ALS is a nervous system disease that causes loss of muscle control, and the disease gets worse over time, and there's no cure. The effects of muscles, or rather like it affects the control of muscles needed to move, speak, eat, and breathe. It's very grim, very scary. And you got to think, if you're someone who is living with ALS, just because you have a disability or an impairment shouldn't mean that you can't use technology. And I really do believe that with all of my heart. Oh boy, it was in late March, and I got to stress late March because the timing was so wild here. Our CEO actually came in and was like, hey, I want to do a cool initiative called ALS Together. And the idea is I want to make a Slack Connect network. So basically a Slack workspace where people who have ALS can go in there and find community, talk to one another, offer advice and help to one another, maybe even find trials. Maybe we'll even be able to get some doctors in there. There's so much potential here. But in order for that to be a success, Slack would have to be a really good host to the many ALS patients who use eye tracking or a head mouse to interact with apps. So that's the super high level there. And I've worked in the accessibility space for quite a while, but I've never worked on eye tracking as a means to use technology. So I had to do a lot of learning. And when I did a whole bunch of research, I actually got to work with a company called Fable, and they helped set up specific user testing and user research sessions with users who need assistive technologies to use software. And so I was actually able to meet with a couple of folks who either use eye tracking themselves or they use a head mouse themselves. And I learned a few things. The first is that you need to accommodate imprecision, and that's why the affordances are so big. You really got to make it easy to like find and click on those elements. And the second thing is that clicks are really expensive. And what I mean by that is a head tracker or an eye tracker doesn't actually click for you. They only move the cursor. So then you got to ask yourself, how do you click? And you actually have to use a second piece of technology to click. So here are like the two primary ways. The first way is you use an eye tracker or a head mouse to move your mouse over a button. And then you use speech recognition to click. So you'll say click, and you wait 3 seconds for it to understand you said click and then actually click for you. It's a really long time to make a click. Or the second way you do it is by using an auto clicker. And what you do there is when the mouse stops moving, if it stays in the same place for a specific amount of time, it'll click for you. So again, no matter what, clicks take a long time. The other things are just hovering. Hovering is like really tough because you can't have your mouse somewhere and read something else at the same time. But you could do that when you use a computer and you don't have to use a head mouse or eye tracking. So there's a lot of deep nuance here. So anyways, I'll get out of those slides. You know a little bit about what we wanted to do now. So when I started to get into the project, I had to figure out like, what would a first pass even look like? What does good look like here? Because I had no idea. Let me see if I could go all the way back in time. So my first exploration was, let's actually offer a very watered down experience for Slack. Let's make it only the core bits of communication. You could send a message, you could hop on a call, and that's it. And so I like made a new kind of like home screen, and I blew up our like menus and lists and made them really large and easy to click with my eyes. And I was like, oh man, looking at this stuff now is actually so funny, by the way. But yeah, like I was thinking, oh, what if I go so crazy inside of channels and I change the composer to these 3 buttons? Or what if we have AI responses because typing with your eyeballs is really hard? And this was really fun to start to put things together and try to figure out how to make moving around Slack easy, how to make communicating in Slack easy.
I also noticed that you don't use Lorem Ipsum in any of your designs. You actually put text that feels real. Like I just noticed, look at this conversation. It's like a normal conversation people would have.
Yeah, you know what? What a great observation. I do want to say a couple things on that, actually. The first is that part of what makes Slack special and friendly is our voice and tone. That's the first thing. The second thing is I wholeheartedly believe that content and content design greatly informs our overall strategy and direction for the design work we're going to do, all the UX UI work we're going to do afterwards. So I think it's actually really important to use real content, to make it feel real, to get a great understanding of what it's going to feel like in product. So yeah, you're never going to see Lorem Ipsum on any Slack designer's work. Content is way too important to us. Okay. So I made these first few frames and I want to show you something. This is a GIF I made and I'm going to let it play a few times. So it's a GIF I made of that very first prototype and I'm using a head mouse. So look at my head in the top right corner. As I move, the mouse moves and I'm using an auto clicker. So as my mouse comes to a halt, that red circle fill up and then it clicks for me. So I'm trying to figure out the mechanics now, right? It's not enough to just look at static mocks. You got to try for yourself. And of course, I will never have that same lived in experience of having that same impairment as someone who does, but I could do my best here, right? And so this was fun. I got to be honest, this was so fun to learn about the assistive technology, to learn how to use it, and then to mock up designs and try to play with it yourself and figure out how to like actually use Slack in this way.
Wow.
So this was cool. And these were some of my first exploration. Now, I think we put together a video at some point and I was working with a colleague of mine. Her name is Brooke. She has ALS. She's the freaking best. I got to say it, but she comes to work every day and works her heart out. And we were just ideating together and I showed her the video of this first pass and her jaw dropped and she was like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to use Slack. It's going to be so easy. And her like honest response was, I want to tell my friends.
Damn.
How freaking awesome is that? If you've never been excluded in life, you might not know what it feels like to finally be included, but man, that was special for her to just be so excited that she wanted to tell her friends. So with that in mind, we were like, okay, let's make this thing. Let's figure this out. So I started doing more iterations. I started really trying to figure out, how do you make this real now? Because there's so many things I've omitted in my first explorations. What should this look like? What should the list styles be? What should the coloring be? Should it feel like mobile? Because it is like mobile, but we We have the desktop. There's all these things floating through my mind at this point. And so I'm just playing around. All this stuff looks horrific to me. I just continued to play around. I thought about how a user joins this ALS workspace for the very first time. How do we prompt them to turn on big button mode, as we were calling it back then, and try Slack in this like different mode? And then I took some time to think about, is there a world in which I could create a slot-based layout that I could reflow any view of Slack into? All right, I don't know. I don't know if that even makes sense, but I was just trying to think, let's see if I have a realistic example here. Like, how do you turn this view into the big button view? And could I reflow all of these different things through this template and come out on the other side of this big button kind of variant? And I was doing that for like literally everything, just trying to figure things out. Didn't even know how we were going to build this thing at this point in time still. Our engineers were like off in a dark room somewhere trying to figure it out. And I was just over here trying to also figure out how all this is going to be possible, maintain a good UX, and have our engineers not have to rebuild an entire client. I think, is it this? I think these are still like some of these like original kind of ideas I had, but eventually we figured out how to make things work. Our engineers were able to take any individual section of Slack. Do you remember when we were looking at channel IA, we were looking at the F6 order?
Yes.
Each of those are what we call sections. So could I take any individual section of Slack and make it take up the whole screen, make it bigger? And could we actually do this algorithmically? Can we just like see what I'm getting at? So we were able to figure that exact thing out. We were able to figure out how to get, say, your home sidebar into the primary view, take up all of this space, make it nice and large, do it automatically and algorithmically from 95% of the client. And so that kind of changed everything for us because we didn't have to ship like a watered down version of Slack. We can ship all of Slack for someone who needed to use eye tracking technology. How freaking cool is that? So what we ended up shipping was something that kind of looks like this, where you have this kind of like main screen with those core kind of navigation tabs shown here as like kind of core navigation items. When you give this a click, it'll take you to that appropriate screen. And so if I jump over here, so here's my main screen. And if I were to click activity, here's what activity looks like. And if I were to click on one of these things, maybe it'll take me to a channel. And yeah, we built this, which is freaking awesome. And currently, users who are in that very specific ALS care network have the ability to access this. From here, what we're going to do is polish up any remaining rough edges, think about kind of any other small improvements, and get it ready to be accessible to anyone, should they wish. So that should be coming pretty soon, and I'm pretty stoked about it.
I'm just mind blown by this. Like, really, I'm speechless. And was this a project that was assigned to you, or were you proactive about it and got involved as a designer?
Okay, it's actually like a funny story. My partner in crime in engineering, his name is Todd. Todd and I have run the accessibility program at Slack for many a year now. And one day Todd was walking down the halls of our office, and this other guy saw him and was like, "Oh, can you just hop into this meeting room real quick?" And so he did. And in that meeting was, this other guy and our CEO talking about doing this project. And so at the end of that meeting, what does Todd do? He grabs his phone and he's, "Andrew, I just got out of this meeting. We got to talk. This is going to be freaking awesome." So we hopped on a call and we talked about it. And of course, I was like, wow, yeah, let's do what we can. Let's do anything we can to help with this initiative.
So right there, this mindset that, hey, let's help and do anything we can or anything you can to help with this initiative. Why is it important for a designer as they become more senior to proactively get involved in projects, to proactively find work in the company? Why not just let your manager tell you, hey, this is the project you got to work on, and just do that?
I don't even know where to start with that one because in my heart, look, you could be someone that comes to work every day and just does what they're told and waits for the next project to get handed to you. Or you can be someone that comes to work every day who like cares about the product that you're making so deeply that it would keep you up at night. And you come to work every day and you just look for ways to make it better because that's what you do, period. And that's the way I try to live my life. That's the way I try to live my life when I come to work. I just think Slack is my baby. And if I see something that I could make a difference on, I'm going to do what I can where appropriate. I'm not going to step on anyone's toes. If I could just do anything, if I could help in any way, I want to. So,
Do you think that if designers show initiative by getting involved in projects that are outside of their just core projects they're working on, do you think can help them during promo cycle?
of course, yeah. But all this more importantly, it's going to help you grow as a designer. Like if you only work on growth your whole career, could you ever walk in and like work on an IA project, or are you going to feel immense imposter syndrome and feel like, oh, I can't do that? Like Andrew does that, not me. So I think variation appropriately can really help round you out as a designer and give you new challenges and ways to grow. So when I think about that ethic, that work ethic of coming to work every day and just wanting to help people, it's also a means for me to like dabble in different areas, grow a little bit. And it's the growth. That's actually what is being recognized when you're getting promoted. It's not the fact you did extra work. Anyways, it just made me a different purview on that one.
I like that different perspective you have, especially where it's like you're getting promoted not because of the work you did, but it's also because of the growth you've experienced in
That's
that work.
exactly what it is. Yeah. Anyone can do more work, but if you just keep churning out work in the same space, you're not really growing. And hey, it might be very helpful and very beneficial. So I'm not going to scoff at anyone doing extra work. Growing as a designer is so important. And you do that through challenging yourself and trying and dabbling in new things. And so, yeah, that's something I try to keep in mind for sure. Jay, before we end off here, I want to share a couple of things because we were just talking about being a staff level designer and kind of a little bit about what that really means. And actually, more than that, we were talking about what it feels like to feel like the product you're working on is your own, is your baby. Let me show you two things that I think are very helpful things that we can do as staff level designers. The first one is around the feeling of your product being your baby. Does it keep you up at night? I recently, maybe not that recently, I guess it says 4 months ago in the top here, I was being kept up at night. I was starting to think to myself, oh man, Slack is getting complex, feeling siloed. I want to do something about that. And so one day I just came to work and I wrote about it. I just wrote what I felt were the problems. And I wrote a bunch of stuff here. And then I put a few mocks together to be like, here's what I think the world could look like if we address some of these things. And as like these more senior designers, one of the things that I talk about when I do mentoring is earlier on in your career, you're given problems. Really early on, you're given problems, probably with even some solutions and a lot of guidance. But over time, as you get more senior, you get less and less guidance, more and more ambiguity. But oftentimes you're just getting given problem. But who is it that actually goes and looks for the problems? And I like to think that like one of the small portions of my job is to look at Slack and try to think about what are the next things we could do to improve and simplify the experience, especially as the person who is working on information architecture. So anyways, I wanted to show an example of, hey, sometimes I'm kept up at night too. And sometimes I think about these things. And sometimes the best you can do is just write about it and then use these artifacts as vehicles to generate alignment with your stakeholders. That's what it's all about. The second thing I wanted to show you is just what I think is helpful output for designers. When you're sharing, I think it's helpful to have, first of all, click through prototypes. I really don't love panning around my my Figma like this, and then panning over here and then panning over here. I don't really love that. This is a bit more polished, and you got to work efficiently the more senior you get, because this stuff takes time. So as you increase your Figma skills and your ability to work faster, you're able to do the same amount of design work, but put together artifacts that kind of help take you to the next level. In this case, storytelling. So what I'm trying to do here is explain to my stakeholders what the things I'm doing with a little bit of context. And this is like just what I do now. When I share out my work, I'll share out all of these things, and I'll have some commentary at the bottom of these slides. And then I'll record a clip and I'll share it out. And that to me is the way that I've found a lot of success in moving projects along. And I think the thing we were talking about with, I don't know, I guess quote unquote, like staff level designer stuff is it's about storytelling. It's about conveying vision, about generating alignment. And I think like artifacts like these and presentations like these are the output that kind of really help generate that. So yeah, anyways, I just wanted to end off there.
This is super helpful. Thank you for sharing this, Andrew. Hey, this is Jay. It means the world to me that you watched this video. If you want to unlock the AI design and growth design interviews with designers at some of the top companies in the world, then head on over to sneakpeek.design and subscribe to the newsletter.